shortly. It's especially useful to be on this webinar because CBHFA in prisons, in our own experience, is very much been going in Irish prisons now for 13 years, and it's almost become part of prison health systems. It works as a whole prison approach, where we have the engagement of healthcare, psychology, addiction services, prison management and prison education, who support volunteers in the volunteering work that they do. And community-based health and first aid, as you know, in the wider communities, is based upon a community assessment, and that is what it is that our volunteers in prisons do, because we treat the program in prisons in the same way as you would in the wider world. For example, the wing of a prison or part of a prison is considered a neighborhood. The landing of a prison is considered the streets. And the cells of the prisons are considered to be the households, in which you might have 1, 2, and sometimes 3 householders or prisoners in there. Within the community assessment that is conducted in all Irish prisons, prior to the volunteers learning health issues and then doing projects, they do this assessment in all 14 of the prisons and then build the program based upon that. But all of the general assessments have shown that MHPSS is the biggest problem in all Irish prisons, and certainly that seems to be something that that is recognised in many other jurisdictions. And so we have in terms of mental health and psychosocial support, we've made a special model, and Jenny Clark is one of our psychologists. We have a psychologist in every prison in Ireland that links and works with our volunteers, and she's going to tell you a little bit now about how we do MHPSS with volunteers within the CBHFA program. Over to you.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me today. So yeah, as Graham is talking, the Red Cross have a lot of support from the psychology service. So at the assistant psychologist level, I come in, the men meet weekly for Red Cross meetings, and I'd come in on relevant modules regarding mental health. So before Christmas, what we did was we did a mental health survey, that kind of community assessment piece, and that was distributed by our volunteers. So straight away, there's that kind of collaboration and empowerment for the men in custody, and that's distributed across their landings, their neighbourhood, and collected and recorded and brought back to myself, and collaboratively we score them up and see what the most prominent difficulties are in the prison within that year. So this year we used the findings from that assessment to develop a mental health week, which we completed in February. And this was a week-long event with different workshops and guest speakers with different focuses such as anxiety, depression, and maybe coping with imprisonment and communication with families. So this was really empowering for the men. And another example of how the community assessment has worked from the mental health perspective is last year in another prison I worked in, there was more specific questions around the mental health impacts of COVID restrictions. I suppose we've always considered the restrictions from a physical health perspective, but maybe not from the mental health perspective. And the findings from this study directly impacted how restrictions were eased within the prisons and visits became more accessible and I suppose person-friendly. So I suppose by collaborating with the men, it's very empowering, but it's also empowered them to carry on even when I'm not present in the sessions. They're helping to develop monthly workshops on many different topics around mental health, just to make mental health seem a little bit more accessible and reduce the stigma. So it's been really meaningful work in the Irish prisons.
Thanks very much for that, Jenny. That model, working with the Irish Prison Service Psychology Service and the Irish Red Cross, has been established now in all the closed prisons, and it works extremely well. In terms of the types of projects that are developed through CBHFA, based upon the assessment, they typically follow mental health diseases, mental health well-being issues that Jenny's talked about, potential. We don't have many suicides, but I think suicide prevention is an area that we need to look more into with our volunteers. And I know Rola, who works with me in Norwegian Red Cross, is going to talk a bit about that in due course. But what makes the program work in Ireland in each of the prisons is because it is a whole prison approach. That we have a monthly management meeting in every prison, where you have a Red Cross prison manager, the Red Cross chief guards, what we call the Red Cross teacher, the Red Cross nurse, psychologist, and representatives of the volunteers. And we sit together and identify the key projects that need to be carried out in that prison based upon the risks and hazards and health issues that are present. And because we have this whole prison management group that includes representatives of the volunteers every month without fail in every prison, it means that projects can get implemented, monitored, evaluated, and where problems exist, they can be fixed because the right people are around the table to keep this thing going. And that's why it's been so successful, because you cannot have a Red Cross program that works in a prison without the complete buy-in of the prison services. And this has been critical in the way that we have created success with this. I'm aware that we're short of time. I'm going to stop there because I want to hand over to Carola, because Carola came to Ireland a couple of years ago to get training to be able to take this program into Norway, as did Australia, and she's doing great work there. And she's also working with me now on the global hub at Irish Red Cross. So I'm going to hand over to Carola to talk a bit about how she has facing with her volunteers the types of mental health issues there, and to talk a bit about how we hope the global hub will operate. Over to you, Carola.
Thank you, Graham. Well, the Norwegian Red Cross has implemented this since 2020, and so we had 2 pilot prisons, and now we're up to 4 prisons where this program has been implemented. And as Graham says, it is very in terms of what needs and what the community in that prison needs at that moment. And in the Norwegian prisons, we have a big issue regarding mental health, but specifically on suicide and self-harm. And the Ombudsman in Norway, they created a report on suicides in prison that was launched 1st of March this year. And in that context, we wanted our volunteers from the prison to talk about what they do and what they see in terms of suicides and mental health in prison. So this is the video I will be showing you. This is from a Norwegian prison called Verdal, which is a low security prison.
Jeg vel mer oppmerksom på omgivelsene, kanskje. Prøver å være litt mer årvåken og fange opp situasjoner og se kanskje etter
So we had a media campaign surrounding this video on the 1st of March, and 14 days later we had a very violent suicide in one of the female prisons, where one of our volunteers as well was a witness to the event. And through the community-based health in detention work that we do, we realize how important it is not only to give the resources to the volunteers, but how we as a Red Cross can take care of our own volunteers in their dramatic experiences as volunteers on the inside. So it's been a very important learning phase for us as well, and connecting to the issues of suicide. And the volunteers are seen as resources by the healthcare department in the prison as well. They see them as good resources for inmates who are struggling with mental health, and can be connected with the volunteers as sort of a peer-to-peer guide in the prison. The community-based health in detention has spread after the Irish long experiences working with the program. So it started with the Irish Red Cross, then the Australian and the Norwegian Red Cross followed, and the French Red Cross and the Finnish Red Cross have also joined now this growing family of national societies with detention work within the community-based approach. And since we're growing, we're gaining more and more experiences, we're gathering more and more tools, and how we're able to implement this approach in different contexts and different prison environments. So that was the idea for the Global Hub. So the Global Hub is a cooperation between the Federation, the ICRC, the Irish Red Cross, and now me as a part of the Norwegian Red Cross, working together to create a community of practice for national societies. This is specifically for the approach on community-based health, how to gather the tools and experiences that we already have between the national societies that are working with this programming detention, and how we can help others to guide and to lead the implementation in other national societies, together with the prison authorities in the national society, in the countries and the country's context, where we create generic implementation tools to help guide this process. That's the aim or the goal of this Global Hub. And if anyone would have any questions regarding either the work that we do on community-based health in detention or in detention work in general, I'll leave my email address in the chat. So if anybody has any questions regarding this, please don't hesitate to send me an email. And this was very... Sorry?
Sorry to disrupt you. I see there's one question in the chat. How did you cope with that event? I think it was about the suicide experience in the prison. And do you already have a supervision system in place? It's a question from Anna Louisa Reina.
So in the Norwegian Red Cross, we don't do monitoring work in detention in places of criminal detention in Norway. We have both state and NGOs that are working on monitoring in the places of detention, in criminal detention. But we are through the program, we're in very close contact with the prison authorities, obviously. And since our volunteers were directly involved in that incident, as both witnesses, but also as resources in the prison. We've followed them up with conversations and debriefs, as you would with any regular volunteer in the Red Cross. But they have also, we've been working with them not just to debrief themselves, but to be able to create a debrief system for the other inmates as well. This is a very small prison with 45 female inmates, and this has affected the community very much. So it's being able to balance the care that we need to give our volunteers, but also to the other inmates through the volunteers. So it's been a steep learning curve, I have to say, with that specific incident. So I hope I answered that question.
I think so. Thank you so much.
And
there's another one.
Yeah, the last question, do you build support for prison guards? That is a very interesting topic, actually, because we have in the Norwegian Red Cross, and I expect that is a program that you also run in many other national societies. It's the prevention, the training for prevention of suicides. So it's a broader training than the psychosocial support training for volunteers, but that specific training is also given to our volunteers in prison, but also to the prison guards, because it is definitely a competence that they need in their work, but they're not able to receive from the prison authorities directly. So that's why we're providing that as well to staff in prison.
Thank you so much to both of you. It has been really interesting and sets a frame going back 30 years in Irish prisons and in Irish Red Cross. Quite amazing. And as this webinar has drawn a lot of attention from circles without the Red Cross, just let me say that the CPHFA, Community-Based Health and First Aid, is a big program that the Red Crescent is running in many countries. And as a matter of fact, the PS Center has just updated the manual on how to train volunteers and staff in community-based health and first aid in mental health. So there is a manual for a 5-day training that you can access on the PS Center website. But there was another question that was going back to the very first presentation, I believe, Graham, about the who is it? The volunteers in prison, and I can no longer see, but it was more about who is it that's actually actively involved in the prison and who are the volunteers. If you would answer that before we move on to Danish Red Cross Youth. We seem to have some trouble getting you through. There seems to be a delay in the connection. Maybe Carola, you can answer it. Now you're there. We can see you. Can we hear you?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
In the Irish model, the Irish Red Cross volunteers are the prisoners themselves. They are not Irish Red Cross volunteers coming into the prison. The volunteers are selected from prisoners that wish to do the program, and they are taught by Irish Red Cross people that come in to teach them the Red Cross part of it, and then the health components and the psychology components are taught by professionals within each prison who've agreed to do that, and that's what makes it a cost-effective model. But the volunteers are prisoners. That's our model. The Norwegian model is slightly different, if you want to say something.
Sorry, I was just answering one of the questions in the chat. I mean, the volunteers are connected to the local branch in Norway, which is a bit different from the Irish model. So it's the local branch has the volunteers in the prison as their own volunteers. They're invited to training on the outside if that is possible for security reasons. They're just a regular volunteer and part of the Red Cross, and all of the training that they do is also valid on the outside, so they can use the training to become volunteers on the outside after the release from prison as well. But it doesn't say that you're allowed to be involved in any activities in the Norwegian Red Cross, but some activities you can, although you have a criminal record. You could be an instructor or trainer for first aid without having to show your criminal record. So some activities are obviously not available for everyone.
Thank you, and thank you both for that very interesting presentation. That will give rise to many more questions, I assume. However, we're very happy that we now have Louise Gråbæk from Danish Red Cross Youth, who will talk about a program where young volunteers are study buddies. And Louise,
Yeah.
thanks for being here with us, and tell us about your
Thank you.
program, please.
Yes, let me see if I can get this to work. Perfect. Can you see the slides? It works? Good. Okay, so thank you so much for also including us, Danish Red Cross Youth. My name is Louise, and I work as a youth advisor, and I'm also a program manager for this initiative called Students in Prison. The Danish Red Cross, they have a lot of different programs in prisons, but today I'm going to focus on what we have in Danish Red Cross Youth, which is this study buddy initiative. And it's a bit more light than what Irish Red Cross and Norwegian Red Cross just presented. It's not, it's a bit more a light version, I would say, but hopefully you will get something out of it. Right. Okay, so the Study Buddy program, it's something that we've been doing since 2015, and it means that we provide assistance to people studying during their incarceration. So the purpose is to strengthen resocialization through motivation and education. And it's based on a volunteer approach, which is study buddies, and it just means that in Danish Red Cross Youth, we are very good at working with young volunteers. So it means we also have a lot of young students as volunteers, and they make very good study buddies. So we facilitate that they come into prisons and help students go through their studies and finish high school. Yeah, and we provide assistance for people in detention, in prisons, and also people released from prison, because we know that this period of time when they're just released from prison, it's where it's very important that they get some support to stay motivated, and also just to figure out how does normal society as a student work. And the young volunteers, they are good at guiding the people who have just been released from prison, guiding them through the education system, which is a bit complex, at least in Denmark. I don't know if it's the same way in other countries, but it can be a bit complex for these prisoners to understand how to get through it. And it's mostly provided on location, but we also have some instances where we help online, and it of course depends on the prison and the security measures they have, but we can also do it through the secured network that they have in some close prisons, where we can get access, and they can kind of be emailing back and forth through this secured network. So we have a lot of different versions of this support, because we know that in some of the closed prisons in Denmark, they are very isolated and they are not able to get any help or any assistance to get through their studies. So we try to just do whatever we can to give them some sort of support. And we, in the Danish prisons, there are approximately 500 students, and we have 50 to 75 students who gets a study buddy each year. We, of course, want to give study buddies to even more prisoners, because we know that I think all of them would benefit from this initiative, but it can be a bit difficult to get access to all the prisons, and it also takes a lot of resources for the correctional facilities to have volunteers, and this is something that we struggle with sometimes. So just to get you some context, the Danish correctional facilities, as I mentioned, we're in detention centers and also open and closed prisons. And in Denmark, there is a duty of employment during incarceration, and therefore many people also, especially young people, they choose to study, because many of them, they don't have a high school degree or a secondary school degree. So this is what many young people choose to do when they are incarcerated. But it's very difficult to do when you're in prison. You can do it, but you have to do it as a self-study. So you basically just get a curriculum, and then you have to figure it out on your own. And most places, they don't have internet or computer, and they don't have direct contact with a teacher who can provide feedback and help them in any way. So because there's a lack of resources in the correctional facilities, the number of students has decreased a lot during the last few years in Denmark, because the study conditions are not very good. So it's just something that prisoners feel like it's not even possible to be able to finish. Yeah, because a lot of them, they have, of course, bad or limited experience with the education system. So when they have to finish education with no support, just on their own, this is something that's very difficult. I think it would even be difficult for most of us to finish high school without a computer. So they also feel lonely, they feel isolated, and they're stressed. And these things, they also affect their motivation to study, because in a lot of these contexts, sharing your thoughts and your emotions can be quite difficult. It's not something that you talk to anyone else in the prison about how you're feeling or something else that's going on in your life. So we experience that these volunteers, they are more than just a study buddy, right? We keep calling it a study buddy, but they also talk about all sorts of other things, because a volunteer is kind of a safe space where they can just share their feelings and their thoughts. But we keep calling it a study buddy, because we know that it's less frowned upon and it's less sensitive to get someone to help you with your education than having a mentor or doing something with psychosocial support or something like this. So it's something that we frame also in the prisons when we recruit students, the prisoners, to participate and to get a study buddy. It's easier to get them to sign up when we frame it as study assistants, and then they are happily surprised when they get so much more. Yeah, so I don't know what's the English word for this, but a lot of the prisoners, they feel I don't know, prisonization. I don't know if you know this term, or the imprisonment. It means that they often feel like their actions have limited impact, that whatever they do, it will not change their circumstances. And I think this passive this passive feeling is something that translates also into being able to finish an education, a degree, because it's very difficult if you don't feel like your actions that you put into it, that it has any impact. So I think these volunteers, they have a very important role in terms of motivating the prisoners and also showing them the steps in the right direction, and celebrating their strengths, and just emphasizing that they can do it.
Louisa, sorry to interrupt, but being mindful of time, maybe you need to move on. You don't have so much more time.
Sure. Yeah, so the visits from volunteers, they are very highly valued. And especially this part that they are volunteering, it's something that most of the prisoners, they say that they wouldn't even sign up for this program if it wasn't because the study buddy was a volunteer, because they don't want to disappoint the volunteers. So this is also a motivation in itself, that the young people that come in and help them, they are volunteering and they don't want to let them down. So this is actually a big motivational factor for the prisoners who are studying. And as I mentioned, they talk about studying technique, how to structure your reading and exams, but they also talk about all sorts of other things. And and this is just a quote from one of the prisoners, which I thought was sweet. "My study buddy is so thoughtful and eager to help someone like me, a convict and complete stranger, and only wants the best for you, both for your studies and in life." And I think this just really emphasizes that even though it's a program that provides study assistance, it can be a lot more just to have someone to talk to. Yes, and the volunteers, they also represent the real world. One of the prisoners says that it's just as difficult for a law-abiding citizen to imagine a life of crime as it is for me to imagine a life on the right side of the law. And it just emphasizes also that the volunteers, by showing that you can do something else with your life, it can be an inspiration for them, and also just to see how else you can conduct your life when you get out of prison. Yeah, and for all we know, all the students that with a study buddy has passed their exam. So this is a really great result, because it's a lot of these prisoners, they don't have a degree, they don't have good experiences with education, and 80% have educational and personal experiences of success, and 75% feel increased motivation for their studies. So this is something that we're very happy about. And now I promised the Danish Red Cross just to include this, the life skills training that they have implemented, which is inspired by the Netherlands Red Cross approach that we're going to hear just in a minute, I think. So the Danish Red Cross, they have implemented life skills training, and the purpose is to increase participants' well-being and insight into their own situation. And it's 4 modules, 2.5 hours once a week, and it's both inmates and volunteers who participate in this training on equal terms. And the topics is good communication, how to cope with imprisonment and stress, sorting your challenges and finding your strengths. And it's also about trying to understand what you can control, like your control sphere. What can you control and what is out of your control, and how can you deal with the stress of imprisonment. And this is they've done it a few times, and they've had some really great feedback from these trainings that they're going to continue working with. And especially this thematized and confidential dialogue is very crucial, and is something that the participants emphasize, and that the Red Cross is not an authority. And I think this is also very crucial. So this is where we can add to the system, or we can provide something different that the guards and professionals are not able to in the same way.
Thank you, Louise. I'm sorry, we have to, really interesting. And I have seen in the chat that people are commenting on the great results. Quite amazing what you have achieved since you started in 2015. What was the starting point? Why did you start? That's just one, because that could be the impetus for other national societies to do a program light, as you call it.
Well, we started in 2005. I don't know if I put something wrong on the slide. Maybe I did. But it's
sorry.
We started in 2005. So I don't really know why. I think it started as a private initiative in one of the prisons, and then because the volunteers are mostly young people, then they asked us, the Danish Red Cross Youth, if we could start this program. So I think, I think that's why.
A very good explanation. Yeah, you started because you just wanted to. Thanks for the excellent results and for the presentation. Really brilliant. And as you rightly said, we're going to go on with life skills. And the Netherlands Red Cross, Valentina Paric, is going to talk about life skills in detention centers for migrants. And Valentina, are you ready to present? We are ready for you.
Okay, thank you. I'm ready, and it was a nice surprise to see that Louisa told about the influence we had on this program they have implemented recently. It's always nice to see that things you do have an effect on other groups who are volunteering with migrants. I'll introduce myself for just a bit. I'm Valentina Paric, and as he said, I'm a volunteer for the Red Cross in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam, to be precise. I am from migrant parents, and in the past I have worked with refugees. And my formal job is I'm a job coach, so I'm doing my job in helping people achieve their goals in their careers and so forth. My volunteering started in 2019 for the Red Cross. I started with life skills workshops at the detention center in Rotterdam. From May 2019 until February 2020, when Corona started, we did approximately 9 life skills workshops in the detention center. The workshop is actually, the aim of the workshop is to help participants develop skills to effectively protect their health and well-being while being incarcerated, as you say. And in this case, these are all migrants, undocumented migrants, who haven't per se done anything wrong but being a migrant, and are residing in a detention center in Rotterdam. The goal of these workshops is to see if we can help them develop the skills in which they can help themselves, because there are basic health care options available in detention centers. So whether it's physical health or psychological health, it's available, but it's only on the surface, on the basics. And we see that the stress of being in this uncertain situation is really hard to handle if you are incarcerated. So the workshops are organized by the Red Cross, the local Red Cross, in sort of series of 4 for the detention center. One is everything you need to know about stress, in which we try to explain to participants of the workshops what kind of effect stress has. It's not only in your head or in your body, it's both. So they can recognize it. The next step is the workshop, how they can deal with it in a healthy way. So we have the workshop Healthy Habits. After that, the workshop is called Looking Ahead Using Your Talents, because that's the part that's more the positive thing for participants to know that they have skills and talents which they can use to help themselves. And finally, the last workshops in the series is Communicating Clearly, because that's key in their efforts to help themselves. Because if they do not know how to communicate effectively in the surroundings they are residing, it's difficult to help yourself. The workshops are organized once in 2 weeks within the detention center. We hope to have between 5 and 12 participants, and it usually is something like that. It's difficult to guarantee a certain amount of participants because of the uncertain situation of the migrants. They have to apply for the workshops. They have to enter their name on a list, but sometimes they're already gone and not longer residing in the detention center. So we are always surprised how many participants there will be. And so for the for the continuation of the program, it's not too easy to organize. We do the workshops with 2 facilitators, as we call it, trainers or facilitators, and there's always a penitentiary worker present because of safety regulations. So it's a very interesting situation, because not only do we do the workshops with migrants, we also do it with the penitentiary workers. The results we have of the evaluation we do every time after a workshop is that not only the participants find it valuable, the program that we offer, but also the personnel from the detention center is very interested in what we have to offer. Not only for the insight in what's happening with the inmates, so to say, but also to see how they can recognize what's happening with them, and maybe learn how to better communicate, because this is an issue they have with the situation with undocumented migrants. There's a lot of stress, and sometimes the reaction of people within the detention center can be very over the top. So how to communicate and try to settle the situation is very useful for them. For the participants, the migrants, the undocumented migrants, the evaluation forms we fill out usually contain things like they found it very positive that there is someone specially coming from to tend to their needs. So that there is someone who's listening, not even offering solutions, but just listening and trying to understand what the situation is, and maybe help them how to solve the problems by themselves. So give them the tips, and the other things they the experience we found is that they do appreciate the experience from other migrants, because they are not usually in a group. They're usually on their own in their cells, so to say. And during the workshops, they have the opportunity to hear different stories from other migrants and how they deal with stress and their situations. So this is a thing that is helpful during the workshops. The method we use is very simple. We talk about the situation, the stress situation, and what the effect can be on the body and the mind and the soul. And we try to see if they can give the examples themselves. So it's usually based on group discussions, and after that exercises they can do with it in the group or by themselves. And sometimes we also offer a physical exercise or breathing exercises just to demonstrate what they can do in their own confinement of their cells. We also use role-playing in demonstrating what the situation can be and how you can handle it yourself. The participants are overall very positive. They feel recognized and acknowledged. Besides the fact that they think they learn a lot about themselves and about how to deal with a stress situation, and they learn how to take control of the things they have influence over. So that's a positive. Every time we do the evaluation, that's a positive thing they mention after the workshop. I think up until now we have had since last year September about 10 workshops, and with a very varying number of participants, and there is overall a positive evaluations of all the workshops. The only thing that's difficult is the cooperation with the detention center, because they have their own schedule they have for the inmates. So we have to work around this schedule. The penitentiary workers are not always very aware of the situation of the migrants, because the detention center is partly used for undocumented migrants and partly for the regular prison population. So they tend to think of them as a whole the same as the other population. So we have to work around this, but there is a positive development in that effect, because the penitentiary workers that are there with the workshops there overall are positive, and they have said that they would like to have the same sort of workshops for their personnel, so that they will be able to handle the situation with the undocumented migrants better themselves. So overall, as well as participants, as the penitentiary workers, it's a success.
Amazing. There's a few questions.
Yeah, I cannot follow the questions because I'm talking and looking at my notes. So.
So there's a few questions. Then we'll have to move on to the next presenter. And the first one is, how long are the sessions, and how do you deal with the language barrier?
Okay, the sessions
and there's the next one coming up if the migrants also ask for individual sessions.
Yeah.
And that's it for questions, ladies and gentlemen. And
I answer the question like this, yeah, because I was muted. The sessions are a maximum of 2 hours because we have this window of opportunity within the detention center that they can arrive at 10 and they have to be back at their cells at 12. So we have a maximum of 2 hours. And the language barrier, well, my personal tip is hand and foot. So if you don't speak the language, usually we have 2 facilitators, and usually most of the facilitators speak several languages. The English is the main language, but we also have people who speak Arabic and Spanish and French sometimes. And the detention center is, because it's the undocumented migrants, there's a lot of people who are living in the Netherlands for a long time already, only undocumented. So they speak Dutch as well. And I think if you are open to listen, language is not too important. And the individual counseling, yeah, of course, there's always at least one person who thinks he should have personal counseling, and we do refer them to the psychologist who is aligned to the detention center. So we do explain to them that we are not professionals, we are not psychologists, so we are there to help them deal with the problems themselves and to point them in the right direction.
Thank you so much, Valentina. Very interesting and inspiring. And let's share your wonderful life skills manual. It's really good. And we knew that the program was going to be packed. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on. We're also very happy that we have the French Red Cross with us today, Aude Formand, who will talk about from helpline support in detention to peer support and suicide prevention. So Aude, over to you. Happy to have you.
Hello, and thanks a lot. I'm just trying to share our presentation. Do you see our screen at the moment?
Yes, we do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We don't see it, so we'll try to do it. So thanks a lot for all your presentations and this webinar. As Ia said, we are from the French Red Cross, and we are happy to introduce you all today on our main MHPSS actions in the French prison environment.
Hello, first we will introduce ourselves quickly. We are both psychologists and both working for the MHPSS service of French Red Cross National Office. I am Jeanne de Salins, and I am especially working on our prison justice mission.
Can concern a lot of our trainings at French Red Cross and includes prison and justice trainings. And also apologize for our French accents. We'll try to be as clear as possible.
All right, now let's introduce our service. We have 3 main missions, considering the psychological aspects in the voluntary action.
carried out within the French Red Cross, developing specific MHPSS action and promoting MHPSS and its integration in all of French Red Cross actions. All of this mission can be translated into various actions and projects, such as support and technical expertise on mental health issues is training, operational psychological support, holding a general phone helpline, Red Cross listening, which is also a helpline but intended for detainees, and other action. We are also part of many projects linking prison that we will focus on today.
First, to give you some context about French prisons, because we think it's quite important. France has currently 187 prisons, and it's a sad record, but there have never been so many prisoners in France. Currently about 73,000 for less than 61,000 places. According to our Ministry of Justice, it's an increase of 4% since last year, compared to last year. And these prisoners often sleep on top of each other, since for the 73,000 prisoners, we have less than 61,000 places. And also, just for your information, according to French rules since 1988, a cell with a surface area of less than 11 square meters correspond to one place, and a cell between 11 and 14 square meters, which is the most common, is for 2 places. Thus, on average, prisons have an occupancy rate of 120%, and it can be as high as 211% in some establishments.
Moreover, in French prisons, 1 person in 5 have neither a job, nor vocational training, nor school education during their detention. Less than a quarter of them take part in social cultural activity, and only in 5 has access to sport. All of these factors lead to very poor mental health condition for the prisoners and are associated with a certain social, relational, and cultural poverty. For example, 40% of inmates receive no visits. Thus, as you can see on the slide, 2/3 of inmates feel lonely or isolated during their imprisonment. 1/4 of inmates have no telephone or letter contact with the outside world.
And unfortunately, on average, 1 person dies every 2 or 3 days in prison in France, mostly by suicide. France remains one of the countries with the highest level of suicides in prison in the EU, and prisoners commit suicide 6 times more often than the general French population, given the same demographic characteristics such as age and sex. Given the high rates of suicides in prisons, the French Red Cross has invested in suicide prevention through 2 main actions. The Red Cross Listen to Prisoner scheme, as we call it, CRED, Croix-Rouge écoute les détenus, and the co-inmate support scheme that we'll develop later. And besides this, we also have a lot of other initiatives about prison and justice. For example, with prisoners' families or solidarity lockers in prison, or such as community-based health, as our colleagues presented earlier. But we won't describe them today, and we'll focus on 2 main actions.
The first action we would like to introduce you is Red Cross listening to prisoners. We call them CRED. The French Red Cross has been involved for many years in the primary prevention of suicide in prisons through the Red Cross Line to Prisoners helpline. Created in 2000 within the Red Cross Listening Service, CRED, through the signature of a charter with the Ministry of Justice and agreement with the Prison Administration. CRED is a helpline dedicated to the prison population. It aims to help combat the isolation and moral suffering associated with imprisonment, and to prevent violent acts wherever they are directed at the person himself, suicide, or toward a third-party aggression. The helpline is mainly managed by volunteers whom we train, supervise, and oversee.
Thus, since 2000, our association has been offering detainees an anonymous and free line, which allows them to talk about, for example, their anxieties and problems. All penitentiaries are concerned, and prisoners, whether convicted or on remand, can call this service. Calls are completely anonymous, as Jane explained, and confidential. As this is a free number, it's free of charge. And we always say that listening remains focused on the person. It's not about listening to a prisoner or a detainee, but really a person who is currently detained, with incarceration being a more or less long part of his or her history, and about which he or she will choose to talk about or not. In 2021, just for your information, we received more than 31,000 calls from detainees. We have a second main MHPSS actions in detention that we call co-détenu de soutien, which means literally supportive co-inmate, and we call it CDS here to get it faster. So indeed, since 2010, the French Red Cross has been involved in a partnership with the prison administration, aiming to set up a peer mediation and psychological support system. It aims to offer a time of listening, a confidential space for discussion by a detainee with a similar daily life, neutral and volunteer, to help ease tensions and anxieties, as well as to help prevent self or hetero-aggressive acts. In this sense, the scheme is part of primary suicide prevention. By primary, we mean before and not during the crisis.
Who are the supportive co-inmates? They are volunteer detainees selected by the administration to prevent other detainees from committing suicide. They offer the person in distress help, a listening ear, and even connection with the various prison administration and health service officials.
And what training do they receive? They receive 3 modules in a training cycle. The first one is the level 1 civic prevention and first aid training. And just for your information, on the slide, the photo shows one of these training that some of our volunteers gave to the detainees. They also receive a training in detecting and supporting detainees in a suicide crisis, and a module on awareness of listening and psychological support given by Jane and I. All of these modules enable the CDS to be able to detect certain suicidal risks, to support people at risk, and to pass the baton to the competent professionals when necessary. The final selection is made after these 3 training courses.
How do they work? On at initiative or the initiative of prison staff.
Sorry, I think we lost you for a minute. How do we work? And then there was a small break. Could you go back up just a sec?
Yeah, for sure. How do they work? In practice, the CDS intervenes at the request of a detainee or his own initiative. On the instruction of the head of the establishment, the CDS is authorized to circulate in detention at certain times in order to speak informally with his fellow inmates. He may receive fellow detainees in his cell at certain times or receive fellow detainees in rooms designated for the endeavor.
When the fellow inmates spots, identifies, or fears an imminent risk of committing suicide, his role is to report the case to the health services, which will provide care, and which is then part of so-called secondary prevention. Supporting prisoners or co-inmates are fully integrated into the prevention chain among other actors of the prison community. It's not a question of giving prisoners a new task or responsibility, which was previously carried out by prison and health staff. The added value of this system is also that it reduces some of the tensions within the prison. And it also helped to put the person volunteering to be into his role as a citizen. It helps to give meaning to the sentence, to promote reintegration, and to refine a better self-esteem.
The presence of the French Red Cross as a member of civil society guarantees neutral support. Thanks to these systems, the entire prison community can become involved in the primary suicide prevention system.
And what impact of the supportive co-detainees scheme?
This project is inspired by the experiences of other European countries, which have seen a significant drop in the number of suicides in detention after having implemented active prevention policies, including similar systems. The French scheme was externally evaluated in 2011. Following 2 years of experimentation, this evaluation revealed that the system helps to reduce tensions linked to ill-being, primary preventions. It promotes the reintegration of so-called support co-detainees, thanks to the empowerment and improved self-esteem achieved over the course of the program. It seems to be able to reduce suicide rates. Indeed, most of the supportive co-inmates we meet tell us how useful this program is to them and how much it benefits them.
And to finish, let's talk about the accompanying volunteers, or BENAC, as we call them. Indeed, once the co-detainees have been trained, the French Red Cross volunteers accompany them during weekly or bi-monthly sharing groups, which allow them to gain the necessary distance from their duties. All the CDS share their experiences, and the healthcare services are alerted if the condition of the detainee being helped gives rise to concern, so that they can be taken care of by mental health professionals.
The volunteer is the listeners of the listeners and guarantees the framework of action of the system, acting in the name of the principles of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. Intervening as a member of civil society, they ensure the safety of the supporting prisoners. They listen to a group of co-detainees with a partner, another Red Cross volunteer, usually once a month. The volunteers are trained and supervised by psychologists, in this case, me.
And that's all for us. We have a lot of other actions, as we say, but we won't present them today. Do you have any questions? If we have the time, I'm not sure.
There will be time for one questions after this very intense and dense presentation with lots of facts. And just a comment from my side, the number of calls that you have in that helpline was really amazing. Let's see if there are any questions. Caroline, did you see if there were any questions in the chat?
One question that's asking, do you have many volunteers?
It depends if it's for the helpline, Red Cross listening to detainees, or for the suicide prevention system. But I will say that in both cases, we have quite a lot of volunteers. I don't know the exact numbers.
For the helpline, it's about 40, 50. Yeah,
40, 50.
Wonderful. It's a wonderful work. And then I think we'll go for the next presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, and we will send our email addresses if you want to join us or to exchange, or if you have any questions later.
Thank you. Let me just remind everybody on the call or the webinar that we will collect all the PowerPoints and put the recordings on the PS Center website. So please add your emails to the PowerPoints before sending them in. And thanks also from my side. Really interesting. And moving on to Swedish Red Cross, where the other co-chair of the European network will talk about support self-help for people in detention. And the presenter is Sarah Hydrenius, our co-chair. Go on, Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ia. Nice to see all of you, and it's been really exciting and interesting morning. So for this presentation, I'm going to present an initiative that we are doing in the Swedish Red Cross past year, and it was actually the MHPSS team working together with a unit in the National Department, the Protection Unit, and the program manager for visiting detainees. So we had this cooperation. And the background is that UN criticized Sweden for a long time that we have long custody periods and with extensive restrictions. And just to make sure that everyone understands is that the custody is the place where the inmate goes to while there's an investigation ongoing. Later on, they are transferred to a prison where they have more space and more freedom and move. So in the custody, they are really restricted. And those persons who have restrictions, they are also not allowed to follow the news, and they have really strong restrictions. So that is also our focus in this initiative. And we also have a national agreement between the Swedish Prison and Probation Service and the Swedish Red Cross on how to increase efforts to reduce isolation for detainees with restrictions. So that is our focus. Okay, so what we have done is that we have interviewed our volunteers and also inmates in the custodies about mental health, obviously. And the result is 11 film clips, and I'm going to tell you about this initiative. So the background is also that the Swedish Red Cross volunteers and the visiting service has a long history in Swedish Red Cross. And when we are describing our work, we do it like this, that we are linked to the outside world, that we provide an opportunity to socialize and to talk to someone from outside without demands for anything other than just being there. And also support the maintaining and building resilience that can be crucial for people on the day they leave the custody. So that is how we describe our activity. And the volunteers, when it comes to MHPSS, they have 1 day training, basic psychosocial support, including psychological first aid for at least 4 hours. And then they have a piloted training. We did that just before the pandemic outbreak. So we have to pick it up now and continue with it. But that is a 1 day training for skills for psychological recovery. That is linked also with the psychological first aid. So from my MHPSS perspective, when I look at this pyramid, we have this framework in our MHPSS policy. We look at that this kind of activity from my perspective should be something about focused psychosocial support. We are targeting a group that whose mental health is at risk and they are isolated. And but the way we describe it is more like it's the basic psychosocial support. So what we have when it comes to MHPSS focus, we also have a booklet that our volunteers carry with them, and it's also placed in the custodies to be available for inmates. That is about mental health, more or less. This one we produced together with an external partner. So when we started this initiative, we started with focus groups because we wanted to listen in what our volunteers says about this with mental health for people in custodies. And they gave us a lot of answers, of course. But they also said that someone said that we need more tools and support how to talk about mental health with inmates. On the other hand, our volunteers also said that we offer a meeting without demands for anything other than just being there. So there's must be a balance with this, that they should be there as someone nice to meet from outside without any demands. But on the other hand, we also need to be prepared how to discuss about the mental health issues. So what we did, because we had this good relation with the Swedish Probation Service, we could interview 16 inmates with restrictions. We did that last summer, and we developed an interview guide, of course, contained a presentation about what is Swedish Red Cross and about the inmate, the story and the experience from the custody and so on. And of course, we focused on about the restrictions, about the health, including the mental health. And we asked, have you been detained before? If yes, is there anything you have learned from being detained in the past about how to take care of yourself? And this, I think, is most important, is what advice about taking care of yourself would you give to others that's being detained? And is there anything you lack to be able to take care of yourself? Just examples. Okay, so we got in total a positive response from the inmates, and also from the staff at the detention center that we work together with, and also from the Swedish Red Cross volunteers. And I think just this letter, as you can see, it's written in Swedish, but it's one example, I think. It was written by a man who was not chosen to be part of these interviews, and he was writing this letter, long letter for 4 pages, the night before, and he handed it over to the Red Cross. And what he's saying is that he is explaining about his career, because he had a long career as a criminal, and he visited many different custodies around Sweden, and he tells us about his mental health, and that he really wants this message to be clear, and also that we should carry it on. So he asked us to use this to provide trainings for volunteers or how to support others. And I think that just shows that this intervention itself was meaningful for many people. They expressed that it was good to tell their stories and provide their experience to others. I don't know. So, and then we analyzed the interviews, and we find different themes were visible. And then we wanted to record the film clips, because what we did together with the authorities was that they found out that they will provide tablets for all the inmates. And in those tablets, we will have these different film clips that will be available for all the inmates, even though most those who have restrictions. So how to record these films, we did that together with another organization. Its name is KRIS in Swedish. It's Criminals' Revenge in the Society. It's a political and religious independent organization. And the association's members are former criminals. And that we believe they were more trustworthy to bring the message in the film than we. So that's why we cooperated with them. And we produced 11 film clips, and we have subtitles in 5 languages. And I will show you 1 or 2 of the clips.
Hej, mitt namn är Henrik och jag har suttit häktad ett antal gånger, och min första häktningstid mådde inte jag alls bra. Jag isolerade mig själv, jag var mycket inne i rummet, kollade på TV, flög iväg i mina egna tankar. Det är inte bra att isolera sig, det är bra att till exempel utnyttja promenaden, träningen, för att man mår mycket bättre och man får tala med någon. Och det, tyvärr så tog det ett tag innan jag förstod det.
Okay, so we have 11 of those very short clips that is helping us forward. And the next step is that we are going to do a tour together with the authorities to implement this at the custodies. And we also want to know how to follow up, because we are really interested in knowing how the inmates think about this initiative and if it's helpful for them or not. So that's the next step. Over to you, Ea.
Thank you on behalf of the IFSC Reference Center for Psychosocial Support and for the MHPSS European Network. Thanks for joining us for this beautiful morning with a lot of very, very interesting presentations. I'm sure that there will be much more to come. And one thing that I really noticed is that we all know that being in a detention facility is a threat to your mental health. And what helps is really quite interesting, because you've all somehow touched upon it, that the community-based approach, including people to feel part of a community, is really important. Secondly, that the volunteerism is a key factor in helping people in detention. And finally, you also mentioned that staff learn, volunteers learn, but also that the work itself is meaningful for volunteers. And I think that is some of the red threads that's gone through all of your presentations this morning. And we're very happy that you joined us. We know it was compressed. We know there wasn't much time for questions and discussion. There are several reasons for that. But Caroline, do you want to have a final word and thank you from the European network and invite people into the network?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank the presenters again, because it was very inspiring to hear, and I'm trying to write down, because also for our own national societies, I think what wonderful programs that we could learn from, and how wonderful would it be if we could have more of these kind of forms of support. Thank you so much. Also for the specific attention on the relation with the detention and the power imbalance that you see with the detainees, with the people in the prisons. Yes, so and yeah, if you want to be part of the MHPSS European network, please contact me. You can add my email address in the chat. We have this forum in the mid of September, and it will be also on the PS Center's website. You can find more information there. And of course, we hope to meet you all again here online, or in real, or by phone. It is wonderful to be in touch. Thank you.